Kill the Stanley Kubrick in me. You see, the whole point of today's podcast, we're going to talk about how to turn a fish tank into a franchise. The word franchise about you?
Yes,
Info business.
probably.
About you? Were you in the 500 Club?
Yes,
Great. Did you take training at BM?
yes. The value of a business, he says, is EBITDA multiplied by the amount of steel in the owner's balls.
Sergey, where to find them?
On Avito. If it were that easy, guys, everyone around would already be billionaires. To properly document business processes and record training, it can't cost 200,000 rubles, friends. Because for 200,000 rubles, given what's happening in the market, you'll just get a set of templates that you can then throw away or burn, and no one will ever read them. Although, franchising is, in principle, a very powerful product, a very powerful way to actually change your life in a few months.
Hello, everyone. This is True Business Stories, Alexander Dolgov speaking, and today I have as a guest a person who has built 3 franchise networks, the founder of French Global, and the author of a book on franchising, Sergey Degtyarev. Sergey, tell us, which 3 major companies, first of all, hello, have you built?
That moment when it seems like we haven't seen each other and we're greeting, right? 3 companies.
Don't give away our direction, you know. We rehearsed, set everything up, and then you burst in with your, you killed the Stanley Kubrick in me.
So, 3 companies. The first is the Sun School Kindergarten Network. It has been in the Forbes top 10 for 6 or 7 years now. In 2019, it even took first place. This is the Sea of Desires Entertainment Machine Network, children's entertainment machines, also in 56 cities, across 5 countries.
And
These are aquariums, right, with fish? Yes, aquariums with fish. Exactly.
you see, the whole point of today's podcast, we're going to talk about how to turn a fish aquarium into a franchise.
And the third is Rublev family. These are the brands Fort Boyard, Juman, Jungle Staff, an event company. The Quest Show format, also operating in Oship, over 90 cities, and not only in Russia. The company holds 50,000 events a year.
Let's conduct a hate test. Now to write down key words. For this episode, yes, which will be on YouTube, I need to put certain hashtags, or I will put them now, and then you tell me if they relate to you or not. Is the word franchise about you?
Yes.
Info business?
Probably.
About you? Were you part of the 500 Club?
Yes.
Great. Did you undergo training at BM?
Yes.
All right, we can put a check mark. We can put a check mark on that. We had 2 tags, exposure and reviews, actually. And we'll find out how you actually put together such a combo. Sergey, do you currently have an active franchising company right now?
No, I left the last company. Did you also leave Rublev family? Yes. Yes.
And why do you create and sell franchise companies?
Listen, well, it just happens that way. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a strategy from the start. So we just launched, we saw a huge shortage of places in private kindergartens on the market, launched a franchise with a partner, and after 2 years hitting the ceiling of scaling in Russia and realizing that there was nowhere to scale globally either, we decided to sell this company. That's it.
Did you sell it completely to the partners, yes?
Yes.
How much does it cost to sell a network of kindergartens? Maybe not the exact price, but imagine I'm building a company through franchising, and I'm very curious about how the market evaluates them. So can you share the evaluation methodology, a rough guideline in accordance?
Look, I usually evaluate based on 1.5 to 2 years of the company's profit when it comes to small and micro businesses. But I have a friend, and once we were just standing together, someone asked him, saying, the evaluation method, how to assess the profit, the value of the business. He says it's EBITDA multiplied by the amount of steel in the owner's bowls.
Not bad. And how much did you sell it for? Let's check and do the reverse formula.
Well, the idea there is, it's not $1 million.
Less than $1 million.
Not 1 million?
Oh, not one? More than 1 million?
Yes.
Okay. Listen, then let's go the other way around. I'm really curious, who buys these small franchising companies? Who needs it?
Listen, these are people who are generally looking for some kind of business for themselves. They want to develop in one field or another.
Sergey, where do you find them?
On Avito. It's very funny.
No. Tell me the secret. I'm sure there must be some mystery here. It can't be that simple. What the heck, Avito? Maybe at least you need to buy a premium ad there.
That's the most, it's important. Yes, it's important to buy promotion. For the business sale ad, spend 1,000 or 2,000 rubles There are actually entire businesses. Yes, brokerage for selling ready-made businesses. There are a small number of agencies or specialists who actually have some databases of potential investors, but in fact, the overwhelming majority, like, in Moscow, to sell an apartment, there's Cian, and that's basically it. There's also Avito, which is gaining momentum there. Well, that's it. Cian and Avito. The same goes for ready-made businesses. There's Avito, and there's also RBC.
They have a special service called Domofond. They've been developing it for about 7 years. I think it really shakes them up when they say, we're building an entire service, it's called Domofond. A separate application. Avito.
Yes. So for business, it's also Avito RBC Business. So maybe something else has appeared there in recent years. But again, the traffic volume there, on Avito for ready-made businesses is much larger than on any other platforms for selling ready-made businesses. There are factories, steamships. There are hundreds of millions. Everything is listed there.
Listen, that's great. Is Sea of Desire sold too?
Yes, my partner bought it out and then sold it to one of the franchisees for a higher price a few months later. That's it.
I sense a note of, just a slight dissatisfaction.
No, it's just trolling. Actually, everything is absolutely fine. It's all good.
And did you sell Rublev Family too?
Well, Rublev Family, yes, I exited that business. We have
sold it.
With a partner. Oh, well, how did I sell it? There are certain exit conditions. So, you could say I sold it, yes.
You could say sold it, all right. And what's next?
Well, it was just an exit, not for cash at the moment. Like it usually happens when selling a business. When you exit, you take a certain amount off the table. That's it. It was a bit different. Yes.
What's next?
Next? What do you mean?
Well, where is the 4th franchise network?
It will be soon. That is to say, it's not far off. But for now, there isn't a project that I'm developing. A franchise that I could say is the next market leader. I'm currently searching. Right now, I'm working on developing other franchises.
You're developing other franchises? Yes. Is it services? Like we say, packaging, brokerage, or what?
Mainly it's consulting. That is, it's that mastermind project on franchising that you participated in, French Booster. That is how it started. There were a large number of requests from people for some kind of training in franchising with BM. Back in the distant year of 2016, we did training, but it has become completely outdated. There was a course called Real Franchising. That was a thing. Yes, that was a thing. Recently, by the way, someone tagged me in a story saying 5 years, 6 years have passed since the course, and it's still relevant. In reality, of course, the market has changed a lot during this time. Well, drastically. If in 2013, when we launched the first franchise, I remember a click in Google search cost, not a click, but a lead cost about 60 rubles through Google search. That's how it was. Yes. Now, the situation has changed a little. And in general, everything from the franchise product to marketing, sales. No, it wasn't a click, it was a lead.
I know. I'm saying click now, to now it's a click. We checked. I showed your guys. Unfortunately, I didn't participate in Sergey's course as a listener. I don't know. Unfortunately or fortunately, I participated as a speaker. We looked at my marketing reports. Yes, and a click costs. A click now costs from 30 to 100 rubles in the franchising niche. Well, from 30 to 60 in targeted queries, narrowly targeted. These are medium frequency, low frequency, and actually high frequency ones cost 100 plus rubles. Somewhere around there it goes. And at the same time, accordingly, if we take even a good site conversion rate of 5%, well, that means we need to multiply the click by 20. This comes to about 1,000 rubles. And there are cases where it even reaches 2, 3, 4, 5,000 rubles per...
And not only that. And that's not the ceiling. There were a lot of requests. They say, make some kind of course on franchising. No, a second online course on franchising. It won't happen. Right? That is because, it's harmful for the franchising market to just teach thousands of people en masse how to launch franchises. You understand this perfectly. Many of those who are watching us also understand. Therefore, it's a small format, a small mastermind format, 3 groups of 30 people each. The first one filled up very quickly. That is, there was a limit of 30 businesses. Then they started asking to launch a second one. It also filled up. As it usually happens, right, someone launches some products. People who have, yes, a certain base, let's say, on Instagram or somewhere else, launch the first stream, but the second one doesn't fill up, right? Since there was no goal to turn this into a full-fledged info business, we didn't prepare funnels. Nothing, right, that characterizes a typical info business. Well, somehow the second one filled up, and now it has become clear that, well, apparently this is a product that the market needs. That's it. And
How much does it cost?
we are already doing it, starting from 350,000. It's 4 months of work. There are 2 participation formats. Yes, it's the standard and VIP format. There's one for 350 and one for 550.
What is VIP?
There's simply more consulting from me personally in the VIP format than in the standard.
All right. Go ahead.
There's VIP and there's light. So that's how it is.
In general, 350 times 30 is 10 million rubles for 3 months. 3 million rubles a month.
Something like that.
Something like that. These are your main sources of income now.
If we talk about, well, I also have investments, of course, that provide income. Crypto.
You can add something else there.
No, not a third. Only pocket. Not only.
Pinika, Gafarov and Partners, digital agency, remember that. Frantically. Not only.
We also sell franchises, for example. There are services for selling franchises and for, I don't like the word packaging. I don't like the word packaging. Why? Because...
Great thought. Now let me interrupt for a second. We came up with a great thought that I really like. Packaging is something that is usually thrown away.
That's true, yes.
Exactly. And, well, what we discuss with people who are involved in packaging and franchising, we have this kind of situation where, on average, about 1,000 franchises are packaged in Russia each year, of which 950 are never unpacked again.
Exactly, yes. Because when people order packaging, they expect it to be turnkey, right? And franchising is a new business. When you are being packaged, what happens? You work with some project manager with a salary of 80,000 rubles, give or take, right? A person who has certain, yes, that is experience.
Don't take it. There are people working even cheaper on themselves.
Let's not talk about that. Yes, actually, who has certain permission, of course, in franchising, but not an entrepreneur, a person who hasn't created networks. And it turns out, yes, such stillborn products result. By the way, we are often asked, they say, if I join your program, yes, the mastermind on franchising, if I order the packaging, it's clear what I'll get in 3 months, right? That is a set website, presentation, scripts, or something else. But if I go for the training, what do I pay for? What will I get? I say, well, look, I have a slightly different perspective. If you order the packaging, let's say for 600,000 rubles, 3 months will pass, you'll get a website, a commercial offer, scripts for it, well, some templates. And the question is, what will you do with it next? Yes, because you won't build a business. And our task is exactly, why did I create this format? Because there are many requests, and I see this format as the only correct one. When it goes, we actually go through a journey of 4 months with the guys, where at every step I see what's happening. Yes, and other entrepreneurs also provide feedback. Then the person, the entrepreneur, invests themselves in creating the franchising product. And then it works out. That is, not just delegating to someone paying 500,000. It's an interesting desire. Yes, to pay 500,000 rubles for creating a franchise and then earn several million a month from this product. If it were that easy, guys, everyone around would already be billionaires. Everyone would be driving a Rolls Royce.
So it's not possible?
It doesn't work.
Where's your Rolls Royce?
It doesn't work. I don't think that's what is needed. I believe you should buy a Rolls Royce when you can earn enough for it in 2 months.
So if you're earning 20 million a month?
Well, theoretically, yes. There were times, a couple of months, but not now.
Not now?
Not now. There's a crisis going on, yes.
You have to open doors with an axe. Listen. Okay, look, do you have a packaging service or not?
Yes, we do.
How much does it cost?
It varies, listen. We don't even have set rates, a rate schedule, or a website for franchise packaging. It's an individual format.
In terms of pricing?
We charge, well, listen, from 300,000 for creating some, a range of materials. Actually, we usually start with presentation websites from 80 to 100,000 rubles. But again, we say that we develop and create marketing packaging. That is, you have a product, we We will help, possibly provide some consultation. And from us, marketing packaging. To properly document your business processes and film training, it cannot cost 200,000 rubles, friends. Because for 200,000 rubles, what happens in the market is that you will just get a set of templates that can later be thrown away or burned, and no one will ever read them. That's it. It's much more expensive.
How much?
Therefore, and we very rarely take on anyone, actually.
But if you do take on someone, well, that is if a person, how much does it cost?
Well, again, we'll break it down there, what we can...
Persuade you to name it? And if the person is like that, huh?
Listen, well, we have done projects for 2 and 3 million. Yeah. So, well, Vekshi, when it's truly adequate business consulting, it's people who have worked in consulting with serious companies. These are not guys who just saw how some franchise was created, stood nearby, and now they are super packagers. No, it doesn't work like that. For some reason, no. For some reason, it doesn't work that way. That's it.
To which other franchises did Sergei Dektyarov contribute his efforts? So we heard about 3. Who else did you consult for? Where else can we see your contribution besides these?
Listen, there are many guys who studied with me. And there is...
Let's brag, indeed.
Let's brag. The irrigation franchise. Nika Company. Yes, Viktor Beganov. He completed training in 2018 and now he's a market leader in this field. Anton Sergeyev, Kids on the Dance Floor. He has a dance school. Even they constantly rent spaces. These are hourly spaces. Also a market leader in their field. Now he has focused on something else, but I think in 2019 or 2018 he was in the Forbes top, entered the top 10, landed in the 10th spot, but nevertheless, yes. So these are results. This is recognition. For example, there were guys studying the company Warpoint. The company Warpoint, they made Counter-Strike in a VR format. Island Soul is jewelry made from designer silver, also a network with more than 40 partners, a large one. Smalbrew. Teeth whitening, and even the baby club studied with us. Despite the fact that Yuri, my dear friend, was a speaker, he also sent his manager to the program.
Interesting. Listen. Interesting. And look, if we talk about which niches are currently studying with you, and what these niches are, how do you evaluate them? How? Let's do it this way. Let's not talk about a specific company. Tell us about the niches that are currently studying, right? And which ones do you consider the most promising in franchising?
I would say that from the perspective of a franchise, you can create it in almost any business. Well, except probably online schools. Friends, a franchise for online schools, competitors of Tugis and others, be very attentive, yes. So, franchises make sense. When companies really need offline representatives in the regions. And I have a very diverse range, from manicure, eyebrows, sports clubs, like taekwondo schools, children's services, to retail. Yes, there's also jewelry. Guys, real estate agencies, so it's very diverse. From the perspective of who currently, again, there are franchises. I am often asked whether it's worth launching a franchise or not. The question is, if you are not planning to expand to other cities or certain cities, how to put it? Sometimes there's simply no point in launching it when you have experience, several locations, a working model. Yes, in some niches, a franchise might sell a few units per quarter if you're lucky. But why not? There are niches where you can build sales of dozens of these franchises per month and truly capture the market. For example, laser hair removal a few years ago when there was no need to license the activity, or kindergartens. 6 or 7 years ago. A joke, right? What could it be? Now, for example, we have guys who are creating a franchise for wild berries. And that's actually a kind of consulting, but an interesting format. A person came and said, I want to create a franchise for wild berries. My first thought was, well, that's some kind of nonsense, right? And then I said, why not? There are a lot of trainings on wild berries, but when you attend a training, you become smarter. Hopefully you'll do something. Well, often, because when you buy training, again for 50,000 rubles, you shouldn't expect to come out of there with earnings of 500,000. You'll come out with the same earnings, 30,000 rubles, Often, well, on average, again, here, starting from product selection to launching and refining, the company simply takes it and brings it to the result. And the main interest of the company is a management franchise. When an investor simply comes in, invests money, essentially into the working capital, the company launches a new product, then, for some time, increases the working capital with the profit, and then the investor starts receiving money. And plus, the usual franchise. People want to enter wild berries, and the company can sell them a franchise either under their own brand or under its own brand, so that they achieve results. Right now, for example, we all understand this is a hype story. I think it will take off quite quickly.
Okay, and if we talk about the franchising market in Russia, why do you think the word franchise has a negative connotation?
I wouldn't say it has a negative connotation. Yes, that's our professional deformation. Most people in Russia who live here, they don't understand. For them, the word franchise is not even on their radar. That is, they don't hear it at all in their everyday life. And for them, it has an absolutely neutral connotation. For many, it might be associated with McDonald's. Yes, that's just something to understand. Therefore, there is no negative connotation. Some negativity exists among those who have encountered the word franchise in their sphere. Why? Well, because, as in any niche, there are different people. There are good products, which, as usual, are not very many. There are excellent ones, average ones, bad ones, and there are fraudsters. In fact, there aren't that many fraudsters in the market. Why do unsuccessful franchises emerge? Because people, having one or two locations and absolutely no experience in franchising, want to become a national chain quite quickly. Of course, they simply lack basic product skills, entrepreneurial skills, or any skills to sustain this growth. When I was developing my first franchise, listen, we made every mistake possible. How we didn't close down, it was just luck. The market back then was forgiving. We even became market leaders. Now that won't work anymore. So yes, there is a noticeable amount of unsuccessful products. Although franchising is in principle a very powerful product, a very powerful way to actually change your life in a few months.
If you're speaking from the buyer's perspective.
From the buyer's perspective and from the seller's perspective too. Within a year, you can increase your profit tenfold.
Which franchise would Sergei Dektyarev buy for himself now?
I probably wouldn't buy one. Yes, that is, I'm not the target audience, just like you, for buying a franchise.
Well, come on, let's still take a look. I mean, I can say which one I would buy, right? Exactly.
Right? Well, which one? Tell me. Maybe something new will come to me.
No, personally, what I like, yes. That is, I like it. Well, if they did what I would want, right? I mean, I would buy a coffee franchise. I had coffee now, that is, I was opening, my first small business was a coffee business. I deeply regretted leaving it because the market grew significantly. I think that if I had stayed where everything was right, yes, I would also have been a big player. But I stood on the sidelines and didn't do it. And that's why I like it now. That is, I recorded my first big season of podcast called Coffee Ranks. I would take some coffee franchise, for example, nice guys. But firstly, there are those who don't do it. There is a Novosibirsk chain with 10 locations called Coffee Academy. Leaders in the number of cups per establishment, right? So if they allowed opening this Coffee Academy in another city, I would gladly open it. I know their metrics, they are very impressive. Well, really, they have a fine-tuned machine. They clearly know the business processes. If they didn't start selling, I would open. Drinks it. Because I like the idea of IT automation, I believe in it. It's cool. But I know their numbers and I really don't like them. That's it. But it sounds really cool. So I would probably take something from the coffee market. Recently, I also recorded some guys from Cofix, but somehow Cofix didn't really appeal to me. I don't really want to sell this one-price coffee. Cheap coffee, somehow I just don't want to, right? I'm sure that a small coffee shop is somehow my inner dream, right? I really want to be given the process and the recipe. That is, I will very clearly understand what I'm paying for, right? So I will open very quickly because, for example, launching a project in the food service industry now, I launched one with meat delivery, right? It has already cost me about 15 million rubles at this point in time. Well, if I had given 1 million, or 1.5, of course, I would have given it. But for that kind of money, well, the total investments, right? But I know for sure that it could have been spent much less, right? And yet I continue to spend. I Well, understand that, for example, the development of a mobile application alone cost 4 now, and it's unfinished. And to get it, well, for some money, it's just a super profitable deal, right? Well, that's how I think about it. I would take coffee, a food service item. I would take a Novikov franchise. I saw him open a cheese factory. Or I see the figures in Novosibirsk. So you take a top Russian brand, take their processes, their kitchen, right? I don't know how he finds it. It's wildly unclear to me, right? Because, like, the Novosibirsk cheese factory and the Moscow cheese factory are two different cheese factories. In Novosibirsk, it's just packed. You can't get a seat. There might be a line of entrepreneurs waiting to get in, right? This, well, understanding the economy, I realize that it's tens of millions in turnover monthly in the restaurant business with a very good margin. Well, kind of, right? And there are no problems at all. Well, none like that. Oh, really? Here, we are, the processes. Well, let's say Novikov sells it expensively there. He doesn't have the concept of a lump sum fee. He just tells you 15 and you 10, something like that. Millions for the right to open. Well, something. I don't know. What do you think?
Look, if I were choosing a franchise, yes, I wouldn't even choose based on processes. I would probably choose based on the brand. Yes, because processes, well, at least I can set them up, and quite quickly. There is expertise in setting up processes in different fields, so from scratch, in any niche, they will be ready in a few months. But from the perspective of brands, developing a brand so that people line up because of the brand itself, that takes a long time and is truly valuable. Why are we, for example, in a Rublev family? Yes. One of the reasons for success is well-known brands. Fort Boyard, Juman, Life Burns the Jungle. Competitors tried to open similar ventures with other brands. Even existing partners who left the network, some opened. Not sustainable. With other brands, this model doesn't work. That's why here, there's almost 100% brand recognition across all regions. I was in Samara yesterday staying at the Lotte, for example. I would open a franchise, for example, of a Lotte or a well-known hotel chain because there, besides the processes, by the way, the hotel has a rating of 9.6, can you imagine? I haven't seen that in a long time. Besides, there is a brand, yes, and people will indeed come to stay with you.
We have a leader in Novosibirsk, Alexander Boyko, who built a building for a hotel, recognized as the best hotel in Europe. Well, I mean, it's very easy. He built you a Marriott and all these presidential penthouses. So people come and say, what's top-notch here? Oh, Marriott? Well, that's it. He simply has bookings because it's a Marriott.
Yeah, that's cool. I agree.
Exactly. You know, if there were, well, there's no franchise in the niche. By the way, recently someone came and talked, about a car rental franchise. Yes, at least for me, it's a pain. Listen, let's go. Many have tried to create it. Guys came to me, we talked back in 2014, they tried to launch this. They tried to download a car rental franchise and something didn't work out.
Well, again, why isn't it working there? Because people are taking the wrong steps. Yes, I mean, if I had made the same mistakes now that I made back in 2013, we would have perished and things would have been very bad. It would have all ended. The market has changed, and back then it forgave those mistakes. Now, whatever franchises are launched, whether car rentals or anything else, they don't survive in many niches because the owners lack expertise. They make deadly mistakes for the business, starting with flaws in the financial model, right? Because everything seems fine, but they don't make money, right? Franchise sales have dropped, and that's it, basically. And he has 50 branches. You know, we even know very famous entrepreneurs, owners of large chains, who don't even have their own apartment, simply because they don't have the money for it. Not because they, well, okay, in Moscow, not in the region.
I also don't have an apartment. I have my own stance. I like starting businesses, but, and I've invested in many things. It's very interesting. I could have bought an apartment, but I tried something else, right? And I'm interested in launching franchises, right? I agree that having an apartment is necessary, right? Well, that's the story. That's it. And I really want to buy an apartment in Moscow, but somehow, when you really... I've lived in the regions all my life, and I don't understand why a square meter should cost so much. It's like, it sells to me in routine.
Have you seen Sochi now?
Once again, these are the two cities I wanted to move to, and whenever I fix some profit from the business, I pay attention and think, oh, okay, let's start now. Then I look at the prices and think, For this. Really? For this? Because I have a business partner. He's from Rubsovsk. I don't know, guys. Find Rubsovsk on the map, a city in the Vladimir region. There, an apartment in the city center costs 500,000 rubles for a 3-room one. A great 3-room apartment costs 500,000 rubles. That's where I grew up, you know? I grew up when prices, well, anything over 3 million was considered expensive, right?
On average in Moscow, you can buy a toilet for,
So, you were talking about franchises of well-known brands. If we say you would buy something from the hotel segment, right?
Well, for example, yes.
Yes. And you said there's no such franchise, but you would create it. Our conversation has drifted off now.
That's what I'm saying. For example, car rental. Yes, like a proper car rental franchise. You arrive in any city and you don't have to search. That's the pain. Poor assistant. Nastya, I really feel sorry for your time. She tries to find rental cars in the regions. Yesterday, I drove this 2014 Infiniti. Well, 2014, I mean, not that it's bad, it's a great car, everything's fine, but it's strange for the market.
Let's help Sergey. Let's help him download the Yandex Taxi app so he doesn't necessarily have to drive himself. There are people who drive you around the cities themselves, and it's cheaper than...
I use taxis a lot in Moscow. I came here by taxi, yes, because I drive in Moscow either in the evening, on weekends, or with my family when it's just inconvenient to be without a car with the kids. Otherwise, I only move around the city by taxi in the morning and during the day in a yellow one, not a black one, but the business class. Again, you can get from the airport in the evening. Yesterday, my son and I were traveling, but in the city, only yellow taxis on dedicated lanes. That's it. But in the regions, you see, firstly, it doesn't operate efficiently everywhere, right? Secondly, I somehow feel a bit more freedom when I have a car. I try not to leave the airport without connectivity, for example, if I'm abroad, right? And without a car. I have this little quirk.
International networks, actually, well, like Avis or someone else. I'm sure they are in major cities, all the million-plus ones.
In million-plus cities, they are somewhere, but again, there aren't enough cars. There's a lot of everything, so, of course. And again, it's an international company, but we have Russia, our own path.
Okay. What other promising niches do you see in 2021? I heard car rental. What else?
I probably wouldn't say there are any super promising niches, because if we're talking about promising, these are hype things, they are not long-term anyway. That is, what is wildly promising right now, in 2 years, most of it will lose any promise and become essentially standard. If it's promising now, what does that mean? That a lot of entrepreneurs will emerge now. Like there were promising barbershops, for example, right?
There
were, and still are. Actually, with a barbershop now, you can buy any brand, but the main problem is that you need to cut hair properly. It doesn't really depend on the brand, but on which masters you hire and how well they cut.
We don't recommend barbershop franchises.
Why? Any franchise can be recommended because you save money, friends, when you buy a franchise. In any case, it's a question of what you expect to get and what you actually receive. Yes, and what you really need and what you end up getting. That's where the problem can be.
In your view, what is the best franchise in Russia? As it seems to you, just send the franchises and the best one, yes. What's in your internal top list? You interact a lot, encounter many. Who can you personally name?
I won't name any, but it's like the best car, you know?
What do you like? Just name some things. Who should one look up to?
I won't name such things. Like who exactly one should look up to. Some need a brand, like for example, yes. Some have the means, the finances to pay for a franchise with a brand. And some need clients, some need the product component in business. Someone wants to develop specifically in a certain field. Children's clubs? I can't live without it. I want to open a children's club. There are such people too. Although it's not about making big money, yes, you really have to want to be involved in the children's business to do it. That's it. But again, people have different needs.
How do you assess the franchise market in Russia? How many franchises are there in total in Russia? And how many of them are actively scaling now?
Listen, there are several thousand franchises. Those that, not only have a packaged franchise. Those that have a packaged franchise, I think there are more than 10,000, considering the number of companies involved in packaging. But These are franchises that don't even have 1, 2, or 3 locations. And if we talk about those who have, there are several thousand of them. Those who are actively developing, I would say, there are literally a couple of hundred.
Only a couple of hundred?
Yes.
We are...
And others, I would say, out of the total number of franchises that can truly be called a franchise, it's has a maximum of 10 to 15%.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And who should I follow? If I'm currently in the franchising market, yes. Who should I? Let's put it this way. If I'm not Sergey. So there's no professional deformation, right? I'm a young guy listening to girls who are talking about the franchising market, right? She wants to look at someone now, gain some exposure, see how some franchises work. Who should she watch in the franchising market in 21st year?
You can look behind Etaji.
Uh-huh.
You can definitely look at Dodo, so that it would be interesting.
And Etaji and Dodo were not at the exhibition.
Yes. Just so, how to say, it would be interesting to watch and admire. Both have a strong franchise product, and your question is about those who are choosing a franchise or those who still want to create a franchise.
I want to create a franchise. I want to understand the players in the Russian franchising market.
Uh-huh.
Just who are the players? You mentioned Ildar Kusainov, Fyodor Ovchinnikov.
Yes.
So who else?
You can look, by opening franchise catalogs and taking several different niches, right? And see who has the largest number of locations, regardless of whether the franchise is good or bad, what percentage of their locations are active or inactive. These are all the people you can learn from. There, with you, we also saw a large number of different videos about whether people are good or bad franchise owners, whether a franchise is a market leader or one of the market leaders. There is definitely a lot of solid information there.
Uh-huh.
And yes, there is something to learn from everyone in completely different niches.
What does Sergey Degtyarev learn?
Sergey Degtyarev learns everything from every person, not only from super leaders, but even from our own franchisees.
Let's go over it again. What have you learned in the last 3 months? What skills have you developed?
Training in hiring personnel, for example. Yes, that is, I am constantly improving in this area, constantly undergoing various training. And these trainings in the strategic business development are quite expensive. That is, specifically in the other role of an owner, not a manager.
Where are you studying?
It's Performia and Alliance Strategy, for example, yes. These are 2 trainings. One costs 500,000, the other more than $1 million.
Has it paid off?
Undoubtedly it has paid off and will continue to pay off.
Uh-huh. If we're talking about books, what have you read that has influenced you?
Recently, by the way, I read Oleg Torbusov's book, The Path of One Oleg. I'm impressed. Do you know what I'm impressed by? Well, not so much by the content, because it's a biography, but by the ability to write, right? That is, by the dedication to the product. Because when I listened to the audio, well, I mean, I didn't read it. I listened to the audio. You really live in the story. That is, a person who is essentially involved in real estate has the talent to write, just like professional novelists. And in the narration, there are sounds of cars, things opening, traffic jams, right? It's just like a movie. That's mega cool. I haven't listened to such audiobooks before.
I listened too, by the way. I recommend it. I didn't listen, I read it. I read it on the Telegram channel. I liked the monetization model, and after that, I was inspired to write a book. Now I'm waiting for us to submit it. Well, it's like the 5th version of some rights, We signed a contract with Exmo, and basically I hope...
What will it be called?
The Story of a Real Entrepreneur.
The Story of a Real Entrepreneur. Super. Listen, maybe I should write a biography too. He wrote something like, Franchises, a franchise for $1 billion, an instrumental book. My partner just released a biography, and by the way...
I know Sergey, Stas, wrote to me and was just asking who I could recommend for the one who wrote it. I recommended my editor, the one I worked with. They worked together and wrote it, and quite quickly too. Well, we'll see.
I was asking you about books, just so we don't stray too far. By the way, I was recommended Pelevin's Secret Views of Mount Fuji. I don't read much fiction, but I'm interested in handling objections. 200 Sales Techniques, for Dispenses the Power of the Subconscious, Igor Rybakov's Thirst, Taleb's Anti-Fragile, The Black Swan, and Ask Your Mom by Kazdev. Well, the last thing, yes, that's what I've been listening to
And where do you listen?
on Litres
No, when you're sitting in the process listening.
while driving in the car. There's some free time before bed. I often fall asleep to books,
Uh-huh.
not to YouTube, because it irritates the eyes, but to books.
Uh-huh. Look, at one point your company was called Catalyst. I don't know, you can find it and check later. You named it, held a big forum, called it French Global, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is it still a company now? Is there some strategy? Or is it Sergey the consultant? It seems like you're searching for something, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. And if you're searching, then for what? If you found it, then what?
Catalyst. Yes. Why did we rename it? Right? Because the name Catalyst was quite a while ago, but French Global, because the company is still engaged in franchising. Yes. And it's not desirable to keep explaining Catalyst all the time. And why global, right? Because we are still focused on the international market, not just Russia. That's it.
What is the strategy?
The strategy is the franchising market. Yes, it's there are 50 companies that are developing 50 franchising products from market leaders. These are products not only in the Russian market, but also in other countries. This includes launching master franchises, educational projects that actually have an impact. Again, not like info business, but educational projects that influence the franchising market. Because, for example, we held a forum. Yes, franchising, it's a non-commercial story. That is there. But this is a story where franchising, there would be a forum at the end of March where market leaders share their tools, their mistakes, yes, so that the market does not repeat them. Some even advise against launching a franchise. So in this too, there is a strategy to bring some order to the market as much as possible.
You mentioned 50 products. Do you want to open your own or in partnership, or how?
Both my own and in partnership.
Both your own and in partnership. So if I have a product now, I would like to grow well with it. I should find you on Instagram, message you and say, Sergey, let's go, or not.
Yes, somewhere we can outsource sales. Yes, somewhere we can outsource other processes. And for some products, we are ready to take a share.
Many people ask me, a lot of people ask me, how much does a sales broker cost? What is a fair price?
Listen, from 40 to 60%, I think, if it includes marketing, from the lump sum fee. It really depends on the market, depends on the cost price, because there is a franchise with a cost price. For example, in our events, we supply equipment within the lump sum fee. Well, you can't take 60% from the lump sum fee there, because the company will be left with nothing. So there is also a production franchise with a fairly high cost price. Therefore, well, you have to base it on the market. But generally, 40 to 60% is the norm. Why? Because, well, let's calculate. Let's even consider our own. What is your cost price for selling a franchise?
Listen, let's put it this way. I'm not very representative. I don't really like to talk about this, right? I get cheap traffic. Yes, my back office is located in the regions, right? And I can sell a lot per month per unit. So the other costs, well, because the office I maintain for salespeople, well, it sells many franchises per month, right? And my rough cost price is probably around 35%.
Well, accordingly.
But this is one of the lowest in the market. That is...
I understand, but actually it may depend. It depends on the check. When we sell franchises for 3 million, we fit into a cost price of 20%, for example. If the franchise costs 500,000, then obviously your cost price is higher. But the cost price there is from 20%, considering the traffic, the work of marketers, the work of salespeople's bonuses. Even there, even without taking an office into account, because we work remotely, yes, from 20 to 35 to 40%. The broker also needs to earn something. So when you see 60%, don't be surprised. Yes, because 35, for example, plus at least earning less than half there, yes. Well, again, to earn, spend on taxes, on everything else, yes, and to have something left over. So, in the end, from those 60%, the broker might be left with 15 to 20.
it becomes impoverished. No, actually, a broker can earn quite well if the product is great, you figured out the traffic, you have a low cost per lead, and you can get a lot of them accordingly. But many factors need to align for that to happen.
Yes, we also do marketing separately on outsourcing, and the quality control department too we do on outsourcing. It's like a constructor.
I see. And how many people are currently working in the company?
Currently, if we're talking about the staff, it's not many. Around 25 people, plus a large number of contractors.
To whom you delegate and subsidize part of the work?
Somewhat, yes. We take them on and work with them accordingly.
How many companies like yours are there in Russia?
I don't know.
Are there any competitors in this niche?
There surely are. I haven't looked, so here.
Not interested?
Well, how to say not interested? We do know, in general, companies that are involved in, for example, franchise packaging. There are many, or very many. But we don't...
27?
Yes. Those are the ones you can, find on Yandex. 27. And there are also those you can't find who work individually. Sometimes people write to me saying some person is working with them. I ask, who is that? As if we should know everyone who is involved in franchising in some way. And there are companies that are involved in sales. Yes, we just have a slightly different strategy. There is no task to focus on franchise packaging. I believe that it's not the most rewarding or interesting business to focus solely on sales. No, mainly on our own networks, partner networks. Only this way, I believe, can we truly influence the quality of the product. That's when you're involved not only in sales, not only in packaging.
Okay. Can one buy a franchise themselves in this case?
Can they?
Can I create a franchise for myself? I'm an entrepreneur. I didn't go to any agency, but decided to create a franchise for myself.
Of course you can. It's the same as, opening a business through a franchise. Opening a business through a franchise can be done on your own. Open a coffee shop. Yes, you can buy a coffee shop franchise. But doing it yourself, well, you won't really make much money in the first year. You'll spend a lot on various things. How to say, you'll invest, but in reality, you'll lose. You'll start earning, hopefully from the second year. When I speak, I directly ask entrepreneurs, did you make a lot of money in the first year? People usually laugh. Yes, it's like that. A nervous laugh from people. Sometimes, even in the second year, people don't really earn much, which is why buying a franchise is beneficial. By the way, our entrepreneurs buy a lot of franchises, especially when it comes to high-value transactions. Well, high value, starting from 3, 4, 5 million franchises, there are a lot of entrepreneurs there. It's a similar story with launching a franchise. If you're doing it for the first time, well, simply in the first year, you encounter a huge amount of hassle, problems, loss of money, and missed earnings. I calculated, so look, I compared the first year in franchising roughly with, not with the 20th, but with the 19th year, yes, in franchising. I found that if we had worked in the 13th year, as we did in the 19th, the difference would have been about 450 million rubles. These are our lost funds. Pure losses, our under-earned money. The management companies lost money, pure franchisee losses, and then Naishe and under-earned money by franchisees, almost 500 million. That's the difference in experience and training. Yes, packaging, it won't provide this expertise, it will just give an external shell.
Let's do it this way. No, if people always want to advertise themselves, but let's talk about the principles of choice. That is, if I want to engage in franchising, I go to consult and learn from those who have already built franchise networks. That's the first criterion.
Of course, that's what I've always done.
Built done?
Well, I mean, in any niche. When something comes to my mind, I look at who the leader is. And I go and either buy consultations or, well, some are willing to meet for free, some have paid consultations, and some offer training.
I go figure it out, and accordingly, if these people have a service, then there's a high probability that the service will be done. Then preferably it should be the person who built it themselves, not just someone who was standing nearby.
It's better if they've built several, you understand? Because if he built one, he has a bias. He has some reasons for the success of his company. But that doesn't mean others will work the same way. Yes, like kindergartens and aquariums. The products are a bit different, right? Well, completely.
The person and the operation.
Yes, plus the person and the operation, yes. Plus, there's also the experience of working with entrepreneurs. Because I also did mentoring at BM for 6 years. Initially with beginners, when I myself didn't have a super extensive experience. And later with active entrepreneurs. With beginners, it's simple, because it's hard to harm them. It's hard to make them lose money. Yes. And your experience will be useful to them in any case.
There's not much to lose.
Yes. Your experience will be useful to them in any case. And then there was a VIP program with already active entrepreneurs. It was interesting there, for example, when someone with a turnover of 1 to 2 billion comes to me, you can make 600 million with just a few pieces of advice. Yes. That's why you deal with these issues much more thoughtfully there.
You know, there's a joke that a woman can make anyone a millionaire if it was a billionaire before. Here.
Exactly. So when people start mentorships or some online courses, there are The problem is that many people do not have any methodology at all, because I have been on this path for quite a long time, working with entrepreneurs. How should this happen? So what can be advised? What responsibility can be taken and what cannot? So different niches, that is more than 1,000 people, have passed through me in 6 years, in hundreds of different niches, all right? So if we talk about a certain niche, can I advise something there? Definitely yes, because there were at least several of them with me. I saw which things worked and which things didn't. Therefore, on the other hand, it's interesting when a person who has one business, yes, becomes a mentor. It's interesting to come to him for mentorship in that business, but it won't be very interesting for him. But for other types of businesses, yesterday, very correctly, the day before yesterday, he said very correctly, right? So you have networks there for training a person who has the internet. They provide internet, an internet provider. So from an internet provider, I have no idea what you have in your business. You understand much better than I do. Exactly. And that's why it's very interesting when people become mentors after starting their first business, earning their first 500,000 rubles. A mentor.
Well, why not?
A coach. Yes, it's possible. Again, yes, the expectations and reality need to match.
The promise and reality? Probably.
The students' expectations.
Although, maybe the students' expectations too. Listen, look, I'm still interested. Let's put it this way. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it because it just doesn't make sense to me. Go ahead. I sold 3 franchise networks and still went into consulting, right? And there's this feeling from the outside, yes, that talking about how to make a franchise is much easier than actually making a franchise, right?
Of course. Talking is always easier than doing. The question is whether something happens after all this talking, you know? After my talking. I have hundreds of students not related to franchising, yes, who have results, you see, and hundreds of students in franchising who have results. So there's this wonderful joke, yes. 2 sales trainers meet. One says, I want to launch a new product for sales. The other says, I'll tell you now. I can tell myself I need to launch it. About franchises, I'll tell you this, yes. There's no longer an urgent goal, to launch something immediately right now. There are directions that we are developing now. Yes, they are shifting the focus there. So now, launching a new franchise tomorrow, well, it just won't have the focus. Once again, where's the focus? The focus is on educational products, on consulting products. So if you've started, keep moving forward. We are also launching a franchise club soon. The same thing, quite large resources. There is one product now that is not in franchising at all, but rather in the construction field. The focus is there. What are you building? A bit later. It's not construction, it's the internet, meaning it's an IT product. So, launching another franchise network tomorrow, well, I would say there are neither resources nor a product yet. That's it. But if tomorrow some product is visualized, yes, interesting, I see, good, we can invest X amount of attention, effort, money, and get 10 times that over the year. We will launch it, of course.
And also for sale?
Subsequent? Not necessarily. Why for sale?
Something ended up for sale 3 times.
Business, you see, I have this vision that business ends in 2 ways. It either closes or is sold. Or you consciously build a Coca-Cola. But not everyone consciously builds a Coca-Cola. Procter & Gamble and other companies. They just do business. And in the overwhelming majority of cases, 99+% of people who build a business, it will either close or they will sell it. And that's why you I had projects that I closed accordingly. There was a project related to smart homes, for example. So we looked at this market, invested money, and closed it. That's it. Event company. So I started organizing events myself, worked for some time, and at some point realized that it wasn't scalable, that the event business isn't scalable, I thought, and I closed it. Then life showed that everything is different, that the event business is scalable, that you can create the largest event company in over 90 cities and hold tens of thousands of events there.
And your biggest mistakes? The ones you say? Well, this is definitely a no-go. Your biggest scars and biggest memories. What do you consider such?
Look, generally speaking, not listening to yourself. Yes, intuition. Because intuition for us entrepreneurs is highly developed. That is, intuition, friends, is not something metaphysical that fell from the sky. Intuition is unconscious experience. It's our brain having a certain background. It automatically compiles a solution and provides it. We often try to convince ourselves otherwise with logic. In fact, you shouldn't do that because it results in big losses later on. And if we talk about them, such costly mistakes with finances. Yes, during scaling, when you've already grown and haven't yet figured out financial planning, management, accounting, it almost cost us our closure. In which project? In children's gardens. Well, those were the most powerful and major mistakes and harsh ones in this business, in the first one. We got it with finances, ended up in a terrible cash gap. And the second is employees. Yes, it's working with a team. That's when, due to misunderstandings with employees, very costly mistakes occur with prosecutors and such things. With franchisees, yes, a good portion of food went bad yesterday. With franchisees, when there is improper communication, poorly established communication with franchisees, you end up with lawsuits, you end up with big problems. And with documents, with the legal aspect, again, when you're young and inexperienced, you pay taxes somehow. Well, it's not that you deliberately don't pay them. You just pay as you understand how they should be paid. You sign documents somehow. And then when you suddenly have 50 or 100 locations, a major comes and says that you're not doing it quite right. So yes, was there such a story? I'm offering you 2 years probation.
Really? Interesting story.
Very. I almost went grey. Friends, it's hard to get used to this, but the second time is easier.
So the first time didn't teach you anything, right?
No, of course, there wasn't a second time exactly like that. But in general, when everyone who comes to you in a group.
What don't you like about the franchising market in Russia? Don't like?
What don't I like about the franchising market in Russia? Probably. I don't like the approach of some entrepreneurs to the product, a large number of entrepreneurs, let's say, not just some, to the product. When people don't create a franchising product and then scale and sell it, that's it. Often they treat their main product the same way. And it all ends, sadly, and of course affects the reputation of the market and the product as a whole.
How do you assess the franchising market in Russia? Is it growing?
Of course it's growing. We are in the Cretaceous period compared to everything else.
So there will be more packaged, more sold, more open franchises?
More packaged, more sold, better packaged, and higher quality products. When people truly create the market, they understand what they're doing. Because they, at least, again, if we're not talking about training, they have at least communicated with entrepreneurs who already have results, they have a graveyard of partners, right? They have a graveyard of projects and other things. And they create cool products themselves.
You actively advertised Ford family, Rublev family, with Dima Portnyagin. Yes, a good tool. Do you recommend it or not?
Look, by the summer of 2019, we were doing the first integration. It went well, we bought it. And in our traffic, it turned out better to do it ourselves. Well, cheaper, but not by much. So it was something between brand buying and traffic. That's about the integration. The second integration was worse. But obviously, when you do it a second time for the same audience, it also brought results, also paid off. It paid off well. I think all business bloggers with a live audience, if you do a quality integration of a decent product, it will pay off everywhere.
How much does advertising cost, Sergey Degtyarev?
I don't do advertising. Do you?
No.
Why?
Listen, I get offers all the time.
I also get messages. Why don't you advertise someone in stories like products and so on? I will often to share those products.
I know, I want to be like Lekha Churikov. Porsche, write to me. You see, I have a Porsche.
You have a Porsche? I don't have one yet. How many does Lesha have? 4 or 7 million on Instagram. Then maybe it will come.
They didn't write to him either.
It will come. Well, his image is a bit different for him to become the face of Porsche or to advertise it. That would be counterproductive advertising.
Yeah, well, stop it.
Right.
Lekha is cool.
I totally agree with you, but not for the Porsche brand.
Well, I don't know. I have a Porsche. I like Lekha. Well, how about that?
I also have a Porsche. I also like Lekha.
That's why Porsche, write to Lekha. Okay, so you won't sell the advertisement. Who do you consider a business blogger in Russia?
A business blogger in Russia, perhaps?
Yes. You say you can buy an advertisement from a business blogger. Who is that?
I would call big money and Rybakov business bloggers in the Russian-speaking space. Yes, that's basically it. If we're talking about content that you can, learn from, right? Because the others, well, they just tend to slide into advertising in their content. Often you can learn from them too, but there's just a different level. When you buy a franchise, they do reviews of different franchises, different businesses, which are obviously integrations, but it's really useful for you. You see how you could get permission at all in business there.
The estimated budget to start a franchise. So I want to launch a franchise. How much money do I need? For advertising, marketing, sales. Exactly. Everything related to the product. Everything related to sales.
If you just want to launch, you can manage with $500,000. Again, if it's an MVP format, yes, a minimally viable product. If we're talking about rapid scaling, well, a couple of million if you really want to make a big impact.
I think even to make a big impact, even a guy would have enough.
It depends on the niche, Well, how much do you need if you've created a product, but whether you have a base or not. Naturally, there are many variables. If you want to make a big impact quickly, you'll need a few million. But I've seen people launch, including in our program, investing a few 100,000 rubles and selling.
And what would be a good number of franchises sold in a year, do you think? You say, well done. How many is that?
It depends on the price. If we're talking about prices up to $1 million, then selling less than 10 a month is bad, right? On average. If we're talking about from $1 million, well, from $1 million to 3, there's a threshold, I think, at 3 million rubles, right?
Is the price the cost of the franchise fee or the cost of opening?
The cost of opening, of course. The cost of opening. It doesn't matter how much the franchise fee is. What matters is how much money a person needs to invest. If it's from 1 to 3 million, then again, selling less than 5 franchises a month is not enough. If your franchise costs tens of millions, then selling 1 or 2 franchises a month is very good. Well, if you're selling 80 to 100 plus franchises a month, right, hypothetically, right, for up to 5 million, you're doing great.
And what is the fair value of the franchise fee in Russia? How do you calculate it? How do you determine what the franchise fee should be?
Well, first, by the market. Yes, you look at competitors and take the average. Second, by profitability. Because when we are creating a franchise, the first thing we do is work on the product and the profit. That is, what competitive advantages can we implement in the product so that it stands out from the market? Not only in business processes, but specifically in the product from the buyer's perspective. Why should I buy from you? The owner who is developing often simply does not see these things. He has been in the product for many, many years. And on the business's profit. That is my experience in mentoring at BM, among other things, shows that even in 2 months, increasing profit by 30% is not a problem at all. Sometimes you can even increase the business's profit several times over within 2 months. We had Pasha Krupin in Lavash in the last batch, and he increased profitability by 1.5 times in 1.5 months. A person with 40 locations, approximately 20 of his own and 20 franchises. That is an already operating business. Despite this, he significantly increased the profitability and profit of the entire network. Exactly. And when we often work through things, by the way, our people are surprised when they come either for a consultation or for sheep training. They are surprised. Where is the franchise? In the first session. Well, where is it? First, the product. Because if you increase your profit by at least 30-50%, you will earn a couple of tens of millions more on the franchise in the very first year. It makes sense to work on the product, right? Not to get ahead of yourself. Here, you can act based on profitability, comparing it with competitors. Again, reasonable profitability, not the one they write on franchise platforms, but reasonable profitability in this market, which you can ask from partners, for example, of competitor networks. Investments, plus the franchise fee, so that the profitability now is reasonable in the market. And the third way to assess the franchise fee is the same as the cost of starting a business.
How much do I want?
Yes, how much I want. And there are indeed people who do it this way. There should be, so to speak, an understanding of how you will achieve this. Well, guys, with a large subscriber base, for example, loyal potential franchisees.
Here, I would probably say that there is brand value, right? And people are willing to pay for that brand value. For instance, if it's the Novikov brand, a Novikov restaurant will succeed in the regions because of the Novikov brand. The guy has been making restaurants in Russia for 40 years, 30 years in Russia, and they use it as a Moscow restaurant that enters our region. How is that?
That's not a fact.
I look at it, see it several times in a row, and see it as if there is no brand.
There is no brand, there is a cool product.
No. Well, once again, they still rely on the brand, right? Did he come to us himself, right?
Who knows? Novikov guys from the regions, please write in the comments. I'm curious. Who knows? The Arkady Novikov brand. The same goes for many Moscow.
And from the Moscow regions. There is an entrepreneurial portfolio. They go to the expensive Novikov restaurant. Entrepreneurs who do business here but are used to the service. They know, oh, finally something opened there that we used to travel to eat, right? But on the other hand, right now, we're consulting a company that's launching a Leps bar in Russia under a franchise. I'm sure and we're actually discussing the franchise fee being somewhere around 15, maybe 20 million, because there's only one in the city, and Leps will come to the opening, and people are willing to pay 20 million for that to sing karaoke with Grisha. And I'm sure that just because Leps will be coming, or maybe promises to come, people will pay for it.
And so the brand value of Leps bar is greater than the brand value of Novikov, I think, in the regions.
I agree completely. Well, I mean, I absolutely agree. I just gave an example that they use it. Well, I mean, Novikov still has some brand, in the end, a much bigger brand than, I don't want to offend anyone, some pizzeria from, let's say, Irkutsk, which is now entering the franchise market.
There, they don't have it. That brand is completely absent. Almost all, not just the majority, almost all franchises are launched without brands. I mean, they provide a logo, they even write team on websites. We transfer the brand, but it's better not to write that, to remove it. When I was selling, for example, kindergartens, the first franchises, I didn't write that we transfer the brand because I understood that it sounded silly. It's more like business education. Yes. So it was kind of a consulting format, how to open a profitable kindergarten.
Your income over the last 5 years? How has it grown, declined? When did you earn the most?
I probably earned the most right before the quarantine. From what? From Fort Boyard. And that's it. And now, well, it's approaching those figures. So it's recovering. That was probably the peak. In the last 5 years, since 2016, I would say it has grown about 10 times since 2016. Not that it's a huge amount, but the growth is noticeable.
Where do you spend the money you earn as an entrepreneur?
I spend it on both on the business, on some new products, and on more investments.
Investments such as stocks and bonds are...
Investments are everything. It's not just crypto or stocks, but everything that can be invested in. That's it. On myself, on family, on education, on my own.
What's your most pleasant purchase ever?
A car, a Porsche, which I bought in 2016.
The car is 5 years old?
Yes, indeed.
And You're not planning to change it?
I am planning to. I think I'll change it.
But it's not critical.
Not like tomorrow, but it's not like an iPhone, that you can just go to the store and buy a new one.
You can't. I'm trying to buy an iPhone. Can't do it today, can't.
And I don't think I'll be buying the 13th one. I think I'll wait for the next one.
Yeah?
Yes. Why?
Well, how? Huh? Well, how?
It's inappropriate, right?
In good company. But we literally have just a couple of questions left, accordingly. Do you often stand in the club 500?
Yes.
Does the club help sell the franchise?
I wouldn't say it directly helps sell the franchise, but overall there are a lot of interesting people there. Yes, so it's not like I'm there to... By the way, I'm planning to join now. So I spoke yesterday in Samara at Equium, and I'm also acquainted with Igor, planning to join probably the Atlantes when I have enough time, if I have enough time. I attend few events, for example, in the Club 500, well, very rarely. There's a group of guys with whom we communicate. They already, by the way, not all are in the club. But one way or another, it's an interesting tool for finding, well, solid entrepreneurs.
Listen, my final question. Which franchise can easily enter the foreign market from Russia right now?
You're putting me on the spot here. Which franchise can easily enter the foreign market?
Just say which product from Russia will scale well.
If you had given me some hints, I could have predicted for you, and quite accurately, because we have entered the international market. We made a lot of mistakes, buried about 15 million, probably. But in the end, we entered the international market successfully. There you go. So that it worked out well. So, from the restaurant sector, from children's education, I don't know. It seems to me, by the way, that those same floors, if they had gone to the international arena, they would have achieved good results there. Because the franchises that are currently on the real estate agency market are inferior to international franchises, they are significantly inferior in terms of floors.
I've been in the real estate market, and I'm sure there's still some work to be done on the floors there, because they haven't answered two questions yet. Just yesterday, I gave a comment to RBC. They asked what I think about franchises in the real estate market. I simply worked in an agency. We tried to launch a franchise with this agency, but the market is very unclear. With 50-year-old women in hats selling apartments using planners, It's a story that's hard to scale and to create technological products from it, which are needed, including by the floors. That is, unfortunately, they still don't have the best technologies. I mean, they're not bad, but still, compared to the rest of the market, let's put it this way. In terms of the service they provide, at the price they want to charge the client, there's room to add value for the client who buys or sells an apartment with them, because their brokerage services are still quite, unfortunately, as I see it for the buyer, overpriced, and you just find yourself in a no-win situation. They tell you have to pay, want to buy an apartment, you have to pay the broker. Well, that's understandable. In terms of the feeling of satisfaction from this, it's like, as they say, an overpriced service, right? Do you know why this happens?
Do you know why? Because, basically in the rest of the world, in almost all countries, the marketing packaging is worse than in Russia. And the traffic systems in many countries are worse than in Russia. Therefore, franchises that can stand out in the market, specifically in terms of marketing, so will win. And they will start very quickly. The only thing is that you need to open at least one location in the region you want to enter, as this will save a lot of money. Or find a partner to open with.
I just know that about the floors they opened in Prague, I think, and it's not going very well so far. They gave an interview on this topic.
There's no focus.
I think there's no focus either. Sergey, I've asked all the questions I wanted to. Thank you very much. From this, we will edit the juiciest, most delicious, best podcast about the market in Russia. Thank you very much for participating. Super. Have a great day.